The opulence of the Hart Mansion was undeniable. A sprawling estate nestled in the hills of San Francisco, with panoramic views of the city and a wealth of elegance within its towering gates. Every detail spoke of Eleanor Hart's unrelenting pursuit of perfection. From the meticulously arranged fresh-cut flowers in the foyer to the glittering crystal chandeliers that cast a golden glow over the marble floors. Yet beneath the grandeur, an air of tension lingered. Sophia Hart reclined on a velvet chaise in her sun-drenched bedroom, scrolling absent-mindedly through her phone. Her auburn hair framed her face in loose waves, and her piercing green eyes hinted at a defiance that had grown sharper with time. She had mastered the art of rebelling against her mother's expectations through her passion for painting, her frequent social escapades, and her refusal to follow the path Eleanor meticulously laid out. But today felt different. The knock on her door was sharp, cutting through the serene afternoon. "Sophia," came Eleanor's authoritative voice. "We need to talk. Now." Sophia rolled her eyes, tossing her phone onto the plush carpet. "What is it this time, Mother?" she called out, feigning disinterest. The door swung open, revealing Eleanor in a tailored navy blue suit that exuded power. Her icy gaze met Sophia's as she stepped inside, closing the door with a deliberate click. "I won't mince words," Eleanor began, her tone clipped. "Your father's will included a stipulation, one I hoped wouldn't come to this. To access your inheritance, you must marry within a year." Sophia froze. Disbelief etched across her face. "Excuse me?" she said, sitting up straighter. "You're joking." "I'm not," Eleanor replied, her voice cold and calculated. "And I've already selected a suitable match for you." Sophia's laughter was sharp and humorless. "Let me guess. Some trust fund baby with a yacht collection and a stock portfolio to match." "Hardly," Eleanor said, her lips curving into a thin smile. "His name is Caleb Walker. Oh, he's a chef. Humble, hard-working, and from Cedar Vale, Oregon." The room fell silent as Sophia processed the absurdity of the statement. "A chef? In Oregon?" she repeated, her voice dripping with incredulity. "What game are you playing, Mother?" "Ah, this is no game," Eleanor said, crossing her arms. "Your father believed in responsibility. He wanted you to understand the value of hard work and commitment. Caleb embodies those values." Sophia shot to her feet, her temper flaring. "You're out of your mind if you think I'm going to marry some small-town cook just to satisfy your warped sense of control." Eleanor's expression hardened. "You can refuse, of course. But if you do, you forfeit everything. Your inheritance, your lifestyle, even this house." Sophia's defiance faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered. "You can't force me to do this." "I can," Eleanor said, her voice a chilling whisper. "And I will." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, suffocating the room with their weight. Sophia felt her world tilt, the ground beneath her feet shifting as her mother's ultimatum sank in. This wasn't a test, it was war, and Eleanor Hart never lost. As Eleanor turned to leave, she added one final jab. "Oh, and Sophia? Caleb has already agreed. He'll be here for dinner tomorrow. I expect you to make a good impression." The door closed with a decisive thud, leaving Sophia alone in the gilded confines of her room. Her chest tightened, and anger coursed through her veins like wildfire. She wasn't just furious at her mother. She was furious at herself for being trapped in a situation where rebellion seemed impossible. Tomorrow, she would meet the man her mother had chosen for her. Tomorrow, the battle would begin, and Sophia Hart was determined not to lose. The dining room of the Hart Mansion was a masterpiece of design, vaulted ceilings adorned with intricate moldings, walls lined with priceless artwork, and a table long enough to seat 20. The space exuded the kind of luxury that only old money could afford. But tonight, the opulence felt more like a prison to Sophia, as she sat stiffly at the far end of the table. She glanced at the place settings, each meticulously arranged with gold-trimmed china and sparkling crystal glasses. The sheer perfection of the scene only heightened her irritation. She wasn't here to enjoy a meal. She was here to meet the man her mother had chosen to upend her life. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Eleanor entered the room, her posture regal as ever. Behind her was Caleb Walker, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the mansion. He wore a neatly pressed white shirt and a navy blazer, his dark brown hair combed back with a casual precision. His demeanor was calm, almost indifferent, as if he were entirely unbothered by the extravagance around him. Sophia couldn't help but notice the quiet confidence he carried. But instead of softening her, it only fueled her disdain. "This is the man my mother thinks can teach me responsibility," she thought, biting back a scoff. "Sophia, this is Caleb Walker," Eleanor announced, gesturing toward him. "Caleb, my daughter, Sophia." Caleb extended a hand toward Sophia. "It's nice to meet you." She hesitated, then shook his hand briefly, her grip firm and dismissive. "Likewise," she said. Her tone clipped. Eleanor gestured for them to sit. Caleb took a seat across from Sophia, his eyes scanning the room briefly before landing back on her. He didn't seem impressed by the grandeur, and that annoyed her more than it should have. "Shall we begin?" Eleanor said, as a team of servers entered, carrying trays of appetizers. Sophia picked at her food, her appetite non-existent. She couldn't bring herself to look directly at Caleb for long, though she felt his gaze on her more than once. She finally broke the silence, unable to contain her irritation any longer. "So, Caleb," she began, her tone laced with sarcasm, "what made you agree to this arrangement?" Caleb met her gaze, unfazed by her sharpness. "My reasons are my own," he said simply, cutting into his appetizer with precision. Sophia arched an eyebrow. "Vague? How charming." "And what about you?" Caleb countered, his voice steady. "Did you agree out of enthusiasm, or just to spite your mother?" Sophia bristled, caught off guard by his directness. "That's none of your business." "Fair enough," Caleb said, leaning back slightly. "But if we're supposed to make this work, a little honesty wouldn't hurt." "Honesty?" Sophia scoffed. "Fine. I think this whole thing is absurd. I don't know why you're here, but I'm certainly not thrilled about it." Caleb didn't flinch. "Trust me, the feeling's mutual." Eleanor cleared her throat, cutting through the rising tension. "Enough," she said, her tone commanding. "This isn't a debate. It's a necessary step for both of you." Sophia shot her mother a glare, but fell silent, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. After dinner, Eleanor summoned Sophia to her study. The room was dark and imposing, with mahogany shelves filled with leather-bound books and a single desk lamp casting a warm glow. Eleanor stood behind her desk, her presence as domineering as ever. "You embarrassed yourself tonight," Eleanor began, her voice icy. "And me." "I don't care," Sophia snapped. "This whole thing is ridiculous." Eleanor's gaze hardened. "If you think I'll tolerate your defiance, you're mistaken." Caleb agreed to this arrangement because he values family and responsibility, things you seem to lack entirely. Sophia felt a surge of anger, but bit her tongue, unwilling to give her mother the satisfaction of a reaction. "I've warned you before, Sophia," Eleanor continued, her tone dangerously low. "Defy me, and you'll lose everything." Sophia stormed out of the study, her chest heaving with frustration. She hated the power her mother held over her, the way she wielded it like a weapon. But what infuriated her even more was Caleb. Calm, composed, and seemingly unaffected by the chaos around him. Who does he think he is? She thought bitterly. That night, Sophia paced her bedroom, her mind racing. She replayed the dinner conversation, each of Caleb's sharp remarks cutting deeper than she cared to admit. He wasn't just some small-town chef. He was a challenge, one she wasn't sure how to handle. Meanwhile, Caleb sat in his modest hotel room, staring out the window at the glittering San Francisco skyline. He had agreed to Eleanor's proposal, out of desperation, knowing it was the only way to save his family's restaurant. But meeting Sophia had introduced an entirely new layer of complexity. She was infuriating, yes, but there was also something about her, a spark of defiance that intrigued him. Both of them knew this was just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. The morning sunlight filtered through the towering windows of the Hart mansion, casting a golden glow over the marble floors. Sophia stood in the vast living room, her arms crossed tightly, as Eleanor entered with her usual air of authority. For a moment they were silent, the tension between them thick as the scent of fresh lilies that adorned the centerpiece. "I assume you've had time to reflect," Eleanor began, her voice cool but edged with expectation. Sophia tilted her head, her lips curving into a sardonic smile. "Oh, I've reflected, Mother, and I've decided to accept your ridiculous little proposal." Eleanor arched an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. "You're agreeing to marry Caleb?" Sophia's smile widened, a spark of defiance in her emerald green eyes. "Not quite. I'll agree to a 6-month engagement, a trial period, if you will. During that time, I'll live in his quaint little world, experience his oh-so-humble life, and then I'll decide if this arrangement will proceed." Eleanor's expression darkened. "This isn't a negotiation, Sophia." "Oh, but it is," Sophia countered, stepping closer. "You wanted me to play along. Fine, but I'll do it on my terms." Eleanor studied her daughter for a long moment before nodding curtly. "Very well, but understand this. If you fail to follow through, you lose everything. No inheritance, no safety net. You'll be on your own." "Noted," Sophia said, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. That afternoon, Sophia arrived at Caleb's modest hotel for their scheduled meeting. Caleb opened the door, his brow furrowing slightly at the sight of her. She had swapped her designer dresses for fitted jeans and a simple blouse, but her air of sophistication remained intact. "What's this?" Caleb asked, crossing his arms. "My terms," Sophia said, handing him a neatly typed document. 6 months of engagement. I'll live in your town, see your life, and then decide if I'm willing to proceed. Think of it as an evaluation period." Caleb glanced over the document, a hint of amusement flickering in his dark eyes. "And you think you can survive 6 months in Cedar Vale?" "I can survive anything," Sophia shot back. "Besides, this isn't just for me. It's for you too, remember. Your family's restaurant. Or have you forgotten?" Caleb smirked. "Trust me, I haven't forgotten. But don't think this means I'm going to make it easy for you." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Sophia replied, her tone as sharp as his. The following week, Sophia found herself boarding a flight to Oregon, her designer luggage standing out starkly among the more utilitarian bags around her. The reality of her decision hit her as the plane descended over endless green fields and winding rivers. The bustling energy of San Francisco seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a serene yet unsettling stillness. As she stepped off the plane, a gust of crisp air greeted her, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Caleb was waiting for her outside the small airport, leaning casually against his pickup truck. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, his rugged simplicity a stark contrast to her polished demeanor. Welcome to Cedar Vale, Caleb said, his tone dry. Ready for your 6-month adventure? Sophia rolled her eyes, hoisting her carry-on bag. Let's just get this over with. The drive to Cedar Vale was uneventful, though Sophia couldn't help but notice Caleb's occasional sideways glances. The landscape rolled by in shades of green and gold, dotted with rustic barns and small farmhouses. It was picturesque in a way, though far removed from the sleek urban skyline she was used to. They arrived at Caleb's family home, a charming, if slightly weathered, 2-story house with a wraparound porch. The scent of fresh-baked bread wafted through the air as they stepped inside, where Caleb's grandmother, Margaret, greeted them with open arms. "You must be Sophia," Margaret said, her warm smile reaching her eyes. "Caleb's told me so much about you." "I doubt it was anything flattering," Sophia muttered under her breath, though Margaret chuckled as if she hadn't heard. Margaret showed Sophia to the guest room, a cozy space with floral wallpaper and a quilted bedspread. It was simple but inviting, and despite herself, Sophia felt a twinge of gratitude. The next morning, Caleb handed Sophia a pair of work gloves and a checklist of tasks. "If you're going to stay here, you're going to help out." Sophia stared at the list, her perfectly manicured nails brushing against the paper. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Caleb replied. "We run a restaurant and a farm. There's no room for freeloaders." Her first task was collecting eggs from the chicken coop, a seemingly simple job that quickly turned into a disaster. One particularly feisty hen pecked at her hand, making her shriek and stumble backward, much to Caleb's amusement. "Not so easy, huh?" he teased. "Shut up," Sophia snapped, clutching her hand. "This is ridiculous." Later, Caleb assigned her to help in the restaurant's kitchen, prepping vegetables for the day's menu. Her inexperience was evident as she struggled to chop onions without tearing up or slicing her fingers. Caleb watched with a mix of frustration and amusement, occasionally stepping in to correct her technique. "You're hopeless," he muttered, shaking his head. "And you're insufferable," she shot back. Despite their bickering, there was a strange rhythm to their interactions, a push and pull that neither fully understood but couldn't deny. As the weeks passed, Sophia began to settle into life in Cedar Vale, though not without resistance. The locals were wary of her, and she often felt the sting of their judgmental glances. Yet, there were small moments of connection that surprised her. A kind word from Margaret, a shared laugh with one of the waitresses, or a quiet evening on the porch watching the sunset. One evening, as Sophia sat on the porch sipping a glass of wine, Caleb joined her, a cold beer in hand. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of crickets filling the air. "Why did you really agree to this?" Caleb asked finally, his tone softer than usual. Sophia hesitated, staring out at the darkening horizon. "Because I'm tired of being controlled," she admitted. "This is my way of taking some of that control back." Caleb nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Fair enough. But if you're going to stay here, you need to take it seriously." "I am taking it seriously," Sophia said, her tone defensive. "More seriously than you think." They lapsed into silence again, but this time it was more companionable. For the first time, Sophia felt a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. Respect, perhaps, or a grudging understanding. The morning air in Cedar Vale was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of pine and freshly tilled soil. Sophia stood on the front porch of Caleb's family home, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as she watched the small town slowly come to life. The sound of roosters crowing in the distance was a far cry from the bustling noise of San Francisco. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the day ahead. Caleb stepped out of the house, his coffee mug in hand. He glanced at Sophia, clad in one of her designer sweaters and a pair of impractical ankle boots, and smirked. "You ready for your first real day in Cedar Vale?" Sophia glared at him. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Great," he said, handing her a second mug of coffee. "You're going to need this." Caleb's family restaurant, Walker's Table, was a quaint building nestled in the heart of Cedar Vale. It had a rustic charm, with its weathered wood siding and cheerful flower boxes under the windows. As Sophia walked through the door, she was hit by the mingling aromas of fresh bread, sizzling bacon, and brewed coffee. The warmth of the place was inviting, but Sophia's discomfort was palpable. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Lily smiled brightly. "You must be Sophia," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "We've all heard about you." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "All good things, I hope?" Lily chuckled. "Let's just say everyone's curious about the city girl Caleb brought to town." Caleb clapped his hands, drawing everyone's attention. "All right, folks, let's get started. Sophia's going to be shadowing today, so be nice." Sophia rolled her eyes, but followed Caleb into the kitchen, where the real chaos began. The kitchen was a hive of activity, with cooks shouting orders and the sound of knives chopping against cutting boards. Caleb handed Sophia an apron and pointed to a pile of vegetables. "Start peeling those carrots." Sophia picked up a carrot and stared at it as if it were an alien artifact. "You've got to be kidding." "It's not rocket science," Caleb replied, smirking. "Just peel." Sophia reluctantly picked up a peeler and got to work, her movements slow and hesitant. Within minutes, carrot peels littered the counter and floor, and her hands were streaked with orange. Caleb watched, his expression caught between amusement and exasperation. "You're making a mess," he said, stepping in to demonstrate. "Like this." As Caleb peeled with practiced ease, Sophia crossed her arms. "You make it look so easy." "Because it is," he shot back. "Now try again." Sophia gritted her teeth and resumed peeling, determined to prove him wrong. By the time she finished, her hands ached, and she had a newfound respect for the simple task. Next came chopping onions, a task that quickly reduced Sophia to tears. She blinked rapidly, trying to stem the flow, but the stinging was relentless. Caleb chuckled. "You'll get used to it." "Easy for you to say," she muttered, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "You're not the one being tortured." After her kitchen ordeal, Sophia ventured out into the dining area to observe the lunchtime rush. The restaurant was buzzing with locals, many of whom cast curious glances her way. Conversations buzzed around her, snippets of which she couldn't help but overhear. "That's Caleb's fiancée?" one woman whispered to her companion. "She doesn't look like she belongs here." Sophia's cheeks flushed, and she ducked her head, pretending not to notice. But the weight of their judgment pressed down on her. Caleb noticed her discomfort and approached, setting a hand on her shoulder. "Don't let it get to you. They'll warm up eventually." "Will they?" Sophia asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "Trust me," he said. "This town might be slow to accept outsiders, but they come around." That evening, back at the Walker home, Caleb's grandmother, Margaret, invited Sophia to help her bake a pie. Sophia hesitated, unsure of how much more kitchen work she could take, but Margaret's gentle encouragement won her over. As they worked, Margaret shared stories of Caleb's childhood, painting a picture of a boy who had always been determined and kind-hearted. Sophia listened intently, surprised by how much she enjoyed Margaret's company. "You're not as hopeless as you think," Margaret said, smiling, as Sophia successfully rolled out the pie crust. "You just need to find your rhythm." Sophia laughed softly. I think my rhythm might be buried under years of city living. Margaret patted her hand. It's never too late to learn. The next day, as Sophia was leaving the restaurant, she noticed Caleb helping a frail elderly man load groceries into his car. Caleb's easy smile and the way he took his time to chat with the man struck a chord in Sophia. For the first time, she saw a side of Caleb she hadn't before, a genuine kindness that made her pause. Later that evening, she confronted him about it. Why do you go out of your way for people like that? Caleb shrugged. Because it's the right thing to do. This town is like a family. We look out for each other. Sophia frowned, her thoughts swirling. It's different. I'm not used to that. Maybe you should be, Caleb said, his tone teasing but not unkind. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, Eleanor was far from idle. She kept a close eye on Sophia, through her network of connections, waiting for the moment her daughter would falter. One evening, she placed a call to Sophia, her tone deceptively sweet. How's life in the countryside? Eleanor asked. Challenging, Sophia admitted, unwilling to give her mother the satisfaction of knowing she was struggling. Well, don't get too comfortable, Eleanor warned. Remember what's at stake. Sophia gritted her teeth. I haven't forgotten. Good, Eleanor said, her voice cold. I'll expect updates. As the call ended, Sophia felt a wave of frustration. Even from miles away, her mother's presence loomed over her, a constant reminder of the life she had left behind. That night, as Sophia lay in bed, she replayed the events of the day in her mind. The judgmental looks from the locals, the frustration of the kitchen, and Caleb's unwavering kindness all weighed on her. But there was something else, a tiny seed of determination taking root. I can do this, she whispered to herself. I have to. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, Cedar Vale could become more than just a temporary trial. It could become the start of something new. The sun rose over Cedar Vale, casting a golden glow across the town's patchwork of fields and rustic streets. Sophia woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window and the distant hum of a tractor in the fields. Despite her initial resistance to this small-town life, there was something comforting about its simplicity, a sharp contrast to the chaotic, high-pressure world she had left behind in San Francisco. The morning began with a reluctant trip to the local farmers' market. Caleb insisted on bringing Sophia along to help pick up fresh ingredients for the restaurant, much to her dismay. As they strolled through the market, vendors greeted Caleb with warm smiles and friendly banter. Sophia, on the other hand, received curious glances and whispered comments. Don't take it personally, Caleb said, noticing her discomfort. They're just not used to outsiders. That's an understatement, Sophia muttered, her designer handbag slung over her shoulder. At one stall, Caleb introduced Sophia to Mary, an elderly woman who sold honey and homemade jams. Mary's sharp eyes softened as she studied Sophia. So, you're the city girl causing all the fuss, she said with a grin. Let's see if you can handle Cedar Vale. Sophia forced a smile, unsure how to respond. But as Caleb chatted with Mary about the latest harvest, Sophia couldn't help but feel a pang of envy at how easily he connected with everyone. Later that day, Margaret, Caleb's grandmother, invited Sophia to join her for tea. They sat in Margaret's cozy living room, the scent of lavender wafting through the air. Margaret poured tea into delicate porcelain cups and gestured for Sophia to help herself to the plate of cookies on the table. You remind me of myself when I was your age, Margaret said, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Sophia raised an eyebrow. I doubt that. Oh, don't be so sure, Margaret replied. I grew up in the city too. It took me years to adjust to life here, but I wouldn't trade it for anything now. Sophia sipped her tea, feeling a flicker of curiosity. What changed? Margaret leaned back, her expression thoughtful. I stopped fighting it. Sometimes the best things in life come from embracing the unexpected. Over the next few days, Sophia found herself drawn into the rhythm of Cedarvale. She helped Caleb at the restaurant, albeit clumsily, and started to recognize familiar faces around town. The turning point came when she encountered a young boy named Charlie, who was struggling to carry a box of groceries. Need a hand? Sophia asked, surprising herself. Charlie nodded eagerly, and Sophia helped him carry the box to his family's truck. His mother, a tired-looking woman with a warm smile, thanked her profusely. That was kind of you, Caleb said later, when she recounted the story. Maybe there's hope for you yet. Sophia smirked. Don't get used to it. Meanwhile, back in San Francisco, Eleanor kept a close watch on Sophia's progress, or lack thereof. She made a point of calling regularly, her tone a mix of faux concern and veiled threats. I hope you're not getting too comfortable, Eleanor said during one such call. Remember, this arrangement is temporary. Sophia clenched her jaw. I'm fully aware, Mother. Good, Eleanor replied. Because if you fail, the consequences will be severe. Sophia hung up, her frustration simmering. No matter how far she was from San Francisco, Eleanor's shadow loomed large. One evening, after a long day at the restaurant, Sophia and Caleb found themselves sitting on the porch. The night was cool and quiet, the sky awash with stars. Sophia stared out at the darkness, her thoughts heavy. This place is different, she said softly. It's quieter than I'm used to. Caleb glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Different isn't always bad. Sophia hesitated, then asked, Why do you stay here? You could have left, gone somewhere bigger. Caleb shrugged. This is home. It's where I belong. Sophia frowned, unable to comprehend the simplicity of his answer. I don't think I've ever felt like I belonged anywhere. Caleb didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Maybe that's because you've never stayed in one place long enough to find out. The following weekend, Cedarvale held a charity bake sale to raise funds for the local school. Caleb volunteered to bake several pies for the event, and to Sophia's surprise, he asked her to help. Don't worry, he said with a smirk. I'll keep the tasks simple. Sophia rolled her eyes but agreed. Under Caleb's guidance, she measured flour, mixed dough, and even managed to roll out a passable crust. By the end of the day, her hands were covered in flour, and her cheeks were flushed with a mix of exertion and pride. At the bake sale, Caleb's pies were a hit, and Sophia felt a surge of satisfaction when a woman complimented her on the crust. You did good, Caleb said as they packed up. See, you're not completely useless. Sophia smirked. Don't push your luck. As Sophia began to find her footing in Cedarvale, Eleanor decided it was time to remind her daughter of the stakes. She sent a sleek black car to Cedarvale, its presence impossible to ignore. The driver delivered a package containing photographs of Sophia at various events in San Francisco, accompanied by a note from Eleanor. Don't forget where you come from, the note read. And don't forget what's at stake. Sophia stared at the photographs, a mix of anger and longing swirling within her. She knew Eleanor's message was clear. Cedarvale was temporary. Her real life awaited her in San Francisco. But as she looked around at the cozy home, the quaint town, and the people who were slowly becoming part of her life, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Cedarvale was starting to feel like home. That night, as Sophia lay in bed, she found herself reflecting on the day, the bake sale, The kindness of the locals and Caleb's quiet encouragement all lingered in her mind. For the first time, she wondered if there was more to this small-town life than she had given it credit for. Maybe I can make this work, she whispered to herself. Maybe I can prove them all wrong. With that thought, she drifted off to sleep, a small smile playing on her lips. The days in Cedar Vale began to form a rhythm for Sophia. Waking early to help Caleb in the restaurant, navigating the quirks of small-town life, and enduring Eleanor's occasional interference. Despite her initial resistance, Sophia found herself begrudgingly adjusting. Yet for all the progress she made, she and Caleb remained at odds, their differences highlighted by every interaction. One evening, dark clouds gathered over Cedar Vale, casting a foreboding shadow over the town. Inside the restaurant, Sophia and Caleb worked side by side, preparing for the next day. The tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unsaid words and simmering frustrations. "Careful with that knife," Caleb said, noticing Sophia's unsteady grip as she chopped vegetables. "I'm not a child," Sophia snapped, setting the knife down with a clatter. Caleb sighed. "No, but you're also not a chef." Sophia crossed her arms, glaring at him. "I didn't ask to be here, remember? This was your deal too." Before Caleb could respond, a loud clap of thunder shook the building, followed by the sound of rain pelting the roof. The sudden storm knocked out the power, plunging the restaurant into darkness. "Great," Sophia muttered. "What else can go wrong?" Caleb grabbed a flashlight and lit a few candles. "Relax, huh? It's just a storm." The flickering light softened the room, casting Caleb's features in a warm glow. Sophia glanced at him, surprised by the calm confidence in his expression. "You're not worried?" she asked. He shrugged. "Storms pass. You just have to ride them out." With the storm raging outside, Caleb suggested they wait it out in the living area above the restaurant. He prepared a simple dinner of soup and bread, and they ate in companionable silence, the sound of rain providing a soothing backdrop. As the evening stretched on, Sophia found herself lowering her guard. Caleb's steady presence, combined with the intimate setting, made her feel unexpectedly safe. "Why do you stay here?" she asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Caleb looked up, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" "In Cedar Vale. In this restaurant. You could have left. Done something bigger." Caleb set his spoon down, his expression thoughtful. "This place is my family's legacy. My parents built it from nothing. After they passed, it felt like my responsibility to keep it going." Sophia nodded slowly. "That's admirable." "What about you?" Caleb asked. "Why did you give up everything to stay here?" Sophia hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I guess I wanted to prove I could handle it, that I'm not just some spoiled rich girl." Caleb studied her for a moment, then said, "You're not what I expected." Sophia frowned. "Is that a compliment?" He smirked. "Maybe." The next morning the storm had passed, leaving the town drenched but intact. Sophia woke with a renewed sense of purpose. As she helped Caleb in the kitchen, an idea began to take shape. "I think I can help the restaurant," she said, breaking the morning silence. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Help? How?" "You're a great chef," Sophia said, surprising herself with the sincerity in her tone. "But the restaurant needs more than good food. It needs a brand." Caleb frowned. "I'm not running a corporation. It's just a family restaurant." "That's the problem," Sophia said. "You think too small. You need to think about what makes this place unique and market it." Caleb shook his head, skepticism written all over his face. "And you think you can fix that?" "I know I can," Sophia said, her confidence growing. "Just let me try." Caleb reluctantly agreed to let Sophia make her changes, but their collaboration was far from smooth. Sophia's ambitious ideas clashed with Caleb's traditional approach, leading to heated arguments. "You can't just change everything overnight," Caleb snapped during one such disagreement. "This place has history." "And that's exactly what I want to highlight," Sophia countered. "But if you don't adapt, this restaurant won't survive." The tension came to a head one evening when Caleb stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Sophia alone. Frustrated and on the verge of tears, Sophia turned to Caleb's grandmother for advice. "He's stubborn," Margaret said, pouring Sophia a cup of tea. "But so are you. If you want to get through to him, you need to show him you're in this for the right reasons." Taking Margaret's words to heart, Sophia approached Caleb later that night. "I'm sorry," she said, standing in the doorway of his office. "I didn't mean to overstep. I want to help." Caleb looked up, his expression softening. "I know, and I shouldn't have been so hard on you." They shared a tentative smile, a small but significant step toward understanding. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and Caleb worked together to implement her ideas. They redesigned the menu, incorporating fresh, local ingredients that showcased the flavors of Cedarvale. Sophia also revamped the restaurant's social media presence, attracting attention from food bloggers and influencers. To Sophia's surprise, Caleb began to embrace the changes. He even offered his own suggestions, blending his culinary expertise with her marketing skills. "This might actually work," Caleb admitted one evening as they reviewed the restaurant's growing online following. Sophia grinned. "Told you." Their hard work paid off when the restaurant hosted its first farm-to-table night, a special event featuring dishes made entirely from local produce. The event was a resounding success, drawing a packed house and rave reviews. As they cleaned up after the last guests had left, Caleb turned to Sophia. "I have to admit, you were right. This place needed a fresh perspective." Sophia smiled, a flicker of pride warming her chest. "And you needed someone to push you." They shared a laugh, the tension between them replaced by a newfound camaraderie. That night, as Sophia lay in bed, she reflected on the day's events. For the first time, she felt like she had truly contributed to something meaningful. Cedarvale was no longer just a detour in her life. It was becoming a place where she could grow, learn, and maybe even belong. Meanwhile, Caleb sat in his office, reviewing the day's receipts. His thoughts drifted to Sophia and the surprising impact she had made on the restaurant. Despite their differences, he couldn't deny that she had a knack for bringing out the best in people, including himself. As the clock struck midnight, both Sophia and Caleb realized they were no longer adversaries. They were partners, bound by a shared goal and the faint stirrings of something deeper. The newfound partnership between Sophia and Caleb marked a turning point in their relationship. Yet, as with all transformations, the road ahead was anything but smooth. For every step forward they took, it seemed there was always another hurdle waiting to test their fragile alliance. After the overwhelming success of the farm-to-table night, the restaurant began to attract more attention than ever before. The locals buzzed about the revamped menu, and tourists passing through Cedarvale started seeking out Caleb's restaurant for its reputation as a hidden gem. With increased demand came increased pressure, and the cracks in Sophia and Caleb's partnership began to show. "You can't just say yes to every new reservation," Sophia said one morning, her frustration evident as she reviewed the restaurant's overbooked schedule. "We don't have the staff or the space to handle this many people." Caleb wiped his hands on a kitchen towel and shot her a defiant look. "I'm not turning people away. This restaurant needs all the business it can get. Sophia frowned, exasperated. And what happens when we can't deliver the quality people are expecting? Your reputation is at stake, Caleb. My reputation? Caleb said, his voice rising. You think you're the only one keeping this place afloat. I'm trying to help, Sophia snapped back. But you're too stubborn to listen. As the weeks wore on, the stress of running the restaurant pushed both Sophia and Caleb to their limits. Their arguments became more frequent, their once promising partnership threatened by their clashing personalities. One afternoon, as Sophia prepared to host a small lunch event for a visiting food blogger, Caleb burst into the dining room. Why are we serving a special menu today? He demanded, holding up a handwritten list of dishes Sophia had crafted for the occasion. Because it's what will impress the blogger, Sophia replied, keeping her tone calm, despite her growing irritation. This could bring in even more exposure for the restaurant. Caleb scowled. You didn't think to run it by me first? This is my kitchen, Sophia. And this is my job, Sophia shot back. I know what I'm doing, Caleb. If you'd stop being so controlling for 5 seconds, you might realize that. The room fell silent, the weight of their argument hanging heavy in the air. Caleb clenched his jaw, his eyes flashing with anger. Do whatever you want, he said, before turning and storming back into the kitchen. That evening, Sophia stayed behind after the restaurant closed, replaying the argument in her mind. She wandered into the kitchen and found Margaret, Caleb's grandmother, tidying up. You've been awfully quiet tonight, Margaret said, her sharp eyes taking in Sophia's troubled expression. Sophia sighed, leaning against the counter. I don't know what to do. Caleb and I can't seem to agree on anything. Every time I try to help, it just makes things worse. Margaret smiled gently. You both have strong wills, and that's not a bad thing. But if you're going to make this work, you need to find a way to respect each other's strengths. Sophia nodded, her mind turning over Margaret's words. Maybe she had been too quick to push her ideas without considering Caleb's perspective. She resolved to find a way to make amends. The next morning, Sophia arrived at the restaurant early, determined to set things right. She found Caleb in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with more force than necessary. Caleb, she said hesitantly, stepping into the room. He didn't look up. What do you want? Sophia took a deep breath. I'm sorry. I should have consulted you before making changes. I was so focused on what I thought was best that I didn't consider how it would affect you. Caleb paused, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. I could have handled it better, too, he admitted. This restaurant means everything to me, and sometimes I forget that you're trying to help, not take over. They shared a tentative smile, the first step toward rebuilding their partnership. Determined to move forward, Sophia and Caleb sat down that evening to discuss their plans for the restaurant. They decided to divide responsibilities. Caleb would handle the kitchen and menu, while Sophia would focus on marketing and customer relations. Their first collaborative effort was a revamped seasonal menu, featuring Caleb's innovative dishes paired with Sophia's ideas for creative presentation. The results were immediate. Customers raved about the unique flavors and attention to detail, and the restaurant's popularity continued to grow. You were right, Caleb admitted one night as they closed up. We needed a fresh perspective. Sophia smiled. And you were right, too. This place wouldn't be what it is without your passion. Their newfound understanding was put to the test during a particularly busy weekend. The restaurant was fully booked, and the pressure to perform was higher than ever. Midway through the dinner rush, a miscommunication led to a major error in the kitchen, delaying several orders. As the tension in the kitchen mounted, Sophia stepped in to defuse the situation. She coordinated with the staff, communicated with the diners, and helped Caleb regain control of the kitchen. By the end of the night, they were both exhausted but relieved. Caleb looked at Sophia, a newfound respect in his eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you." Sophia smiled. "We're a team, remember?" As the weeks turned into months, the dynamic between Sophia and Caleb shifted. Their arguments became less frequent, replaced by moments of genuine connection. Sophia found herself admiring Caleb's dedication and integrity, while Caleb began to see Sophia's resilience and creativity in a new light. One evening, after a particularly successful dinner service, they sat together on the restaurant's porch, watching the stars. "You've changed a lot since you got here," Caleb said, glancing at Sophia. She chuckled. "So have you." They shared a quiet laugh, the unspoken bond between them growing stronger with each passing day. The autumn air in Cedarvale carried a crispness that hinted at the changing seasons, and with it came one of the most cherished traditions in the town, the annual Harvest Festival. Known for its celebration of community, food, and local artisans, the festival brought the entire town together in a way that nothing else could. For Sophia, it was yet another challenge, and an opportunity she didn't dare squander. The festival wasn't just an event, it was the heartbeat of Cedarvale's community. Caleb explained its importance as they walked through the town square, which was abuzz with preparations. Every year, the Harvest Festival brings people from all over the county. It's not just about celebrating the season. It's about supporting local businesses. Sophia nodded, taking in the colorful banners strung between lampposts and the vendors setting up their stalls. "And the restaurant participates?" Caleb smirked. "Of course. It's tradition. This year, though, we're doing something special." He didn't elaborate, and Sophia could see the spark of excitement in his eyes. Whatever he had planned, it was clear that this festival meant the world to him. For Sophia, the festival represented a chance to prove herself, not just to Caleb, but to the entire town. Despite her growing connection with the community, she still felt like an outsider, and she was determined to change that. As Caleb busied himself with the restaurant's booth preparations, Sophia offered to help. "I want to be involved," she said, her tone resolute. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "You sure? This isn't exactly your scene." "Exactly," Sophia replied with a wry smile. "It's time I made it mine." The restaurant's booth stood out among the others, thanks to Sophia's flair for presentation. She had worked tirelessly to create a visually stunning display, incorporating rustic charm with modern aesthetics. Baskets of fresh produce surrounded the booth, alongside jars of house-made preserves and a chalkboard menu featuring Caleb's signature dishes. "I'll admit," Caleb said, surveying the setup, "this looks incredible." Sophia beamed. "Just wait until you see the crowd it draws." And draw a crowd. It did. Locals and visitors alike flocked to the booth, eager to sample Caleb's creations. Sophia handled the customers with ease, her charm and enthusiasm winning over even the most skeptical townsfolk. A highlight of the festival was the annual culinary competition, where local chefs showcased their skills. Caleb had entered every year, and this time, Sophia insisted on helping him prepare. "You really want to do this?" Caleb asked as they worked in the kitchen late one night. Sophia nodded. "We're a team now, remember?" They decided on a dish that combined Caleb's expertise with Sophia's creative input, a butternut squash ravioli with sage butter sauce, using ingredients sourced from local farms. The dish was a gamble, simple yet sophisticated. It needed to be executed perfectly. The day of the competition arrived, and the energy in the air was electric. Sophia and Caleb worked seamlessly in the makeshift festival kitchen, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. As Caleb plated the final dish, Sophia added the finishing touch, a sprinkle of freshly grated Parmesan. "Perfect," Caleb said, a rare smile breaking through his usually stoic demeanor. When the judges tasted their dish, the expressions on their faces said it all. Later, as the winners were announced, Sophia and Caleb stood together, their hands clasped tightly. When their names were called, the crowd erupted into applause. The victory was more than just a win in the competition. It was a turning point for Sophia. The townspeople, who had once viewed her with suspicion, now saw her as one of their own. "Nice work, city girl," Martha Jenkins said, giving Sophia a rare nod of approval. "You're starting to fit in around here." Sophia couldn't hide her grin. "Thanks, Martha. That means a lot." Caleb watched from the sidelines, a mixture of pride and admiration in his eyes. For the first time, he saw Sophia not as the spoiled daughter of a millionaire, but as someone who had truly earned her place in Cedar Vale. As the festival wound down, Sophia found a quiet moment to reflect on everything she had accomplished. But her sense of triumph was short-lived when she received a text from Eleanor. "Don't think for a second that this changes anything. You know where you belong." Sophia stared at the message, her emotions a whirlwind of defiance and doubt. She had come so far, but Eleanor's grip on her life still lingered like a dark cloud. That evening, as the stars lit up the Cedar Vale sky, Caleb found Sophia sitting alone on the restaurant's porch. "Hey," he said softly, sitting beside her. "You okay?" Sophia hesitated before showing him the text. "She's not going to stop, Caleb. No matter what I do, she'll always find a way to pull me back." Caleb took her hand in his grip steady and reassuring. "Then we fight back together. You've got people here who believe in you, Sophia. Don't let her take that away." For the first time, Sophia felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she didn't have to face Eleanor's shadow alone. Maybe, just maybe, she had finally found a place and a partner worth fighting for. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the windows of Caleb's modest restaurant. The air was filled with the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baking bread. For the first time in weeks, Sophia allowed herself a moment to savor the small victories, the festival's success, the warm acceptance of the Cedar Vale community, and her growing partnership with Caleb. But as she took a sip of her coffee, her phone buzzed ominously on the counter. The headline on the screen stopped her cold. "Heiress slumming it in small-town Oregon. A failed rebellion or true love?" Sophia's stomach twisted as she read the article. It wasn't just a hit piece. It was a calculated attack. It painted Caleb as a desperate small-town chef, exploiting Sophia for her wealth, and portrayed her as a spoiled socialite playing house. Worse, it cited anonymous sources that painted the restaurant as unsanitary and struggling, effectively tarnishing its reputation overnight. Sophia clenched her fists, her mind racing. She didn't need to guess who was behind this. Eleanor's fingerprints were all over it. By midday, the effects of the article were evident. Customers canceled reservations, and a health inspector arrived unannounced, scouring every corner of the restaurant. Though the inspector found nothing wrong, the damage was done. Locals who had once supported Caleb's restaurant now hesitated, whispering about the rumors in hushed tones. Caleb's frustration simmered as he paced the kitchen. "She won't stop, until she's destroyed everything I've built," he muttered. Sophia's guilt was palpable. "This is my fault. She's doing this because of me." Caleb stopped, his expression softening despite his anger. "It's not your fault. This is on her, not you. But we can't let her win." That evening, as Sophia tried to regroup, Another text from Eleanor arrived. "This is your last chance, Sophia. Come home, and I'll restore your inheritance. Stay, and you'll lose everything." Sophia stared at the message, her emotions a tangled mess of anger and sorrow. She knew what Eleanor was doing, dangling the life Sophia had left behind like a carrot, trying to lure her back into submission. She showed the text to Caleb, who frowned deeply. "You're not seriously considering it, are you?" Sophia shook her head, her resolve hardening. "Number, she can't buy me back. But we need to find a way to fight this." Over dinner, Caleb and Sophia brainstormed how to counter Eleanor's sabotage. Caleb suggested a strategy that combined transparency with community outreach. "If the town sees who we really are, Eleanor's lies won't stick," he said. Sophia nodded, her mind already racing with ideas. "We need to be proactive. A charity event could be the perfect opportunity to show people what we stand for and to rebuild trust." Together, they decided to organize a community dinner at the restaurant, offering free meals and a chance for locals to see the kitchen in action. Caleb also planned to personally address the rumors, showing his commitment to quality and honesty. As plans for the event unfolded, Eleanor launched a new wave of attacks. Flyers appeared around town, echoing the accusations from the article. Anonymous posts on social media accused the restaurant of using subpar ingredients and violating health codes. Sophia was livid. "She's trying to bury us before we even have a chance to fight back." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then we'll make our stand louder and stronger." The evening of the community dinner arrived, and the restaurant buzzed with activity. Sophia had used her marketing skills to spread the word, and the turnout exceeded their expectations. Families, farmers, and even some of Cedar Vale's most skeptical residents filled the tables, eager to see if the rumors were true. Sophia and Caleb worked tirelessly, greeting guests and serving dishes that highlighted the best of local produce. Caleb's grandmother, who rarely ventured out these days, made an appearance and charmed the crowd with stories of the restaurant's history. As the night wore on, Caleb took a moment to address the crowd. Standing in the center of the room, he spoke with heartfelt sincerity. "This restaurant has always been about more than food. It's about community. It's about creating something meaningful with the people you care about. And no amount of rumors or sabotage will change that." The crowd erupted into applause, and Sophia felt a swell of pride. For the first time, she realized just how deeply Caleb's passion resonated with those around him. The event was a resounding success. Local bloggers posted glowing reviews, and customers began returning to the restaurant. Sophia and Caleb stayed late into the night, cleaning up and reflecting on the evening. "We did it," Sophia said, exhaustion mingling with relief. Caleb smiled, a rare look of contentment on his face. "We did it together." But the victory was short-lived. The next morning, Sophia received a call from her childhood friend and confidant, Lily. "Sophia, you need to see this," Lily said urgently. Sophia opened the link Lily sent, her heart sinking as she read the headline. "Sophia Hart, the heiress who abandoned her family's legacy." The article wasn't just an attack. It was a detailed exposé of Sophia's life, framed to make her look ungrateful and irresponsible. "It's her way of punishing me," Sophia said, her voice trembling. "She's trying to isolate me, to make sure I have nowhere to turn." Caleb found her sitting on the restaurant's back steps, the article open on her phone. "I can't keep dragging you into this," she said quietly. "Maybe Eleanor's right. Maybe I don't belong here." Caleb crouched beside her, his expression resolute. "You belong here because you fought for it. Don't let her convince you otherwise." Sophia looked at him, her determination reigniting. "You're right. I'm not running. Not this time. Sophia decided to confront Eleanor directly, traveling to San Francisco to face her mother. When she arrived at Eleanor's sleek penthouse, the tension was palpable. "Why are you doing this?" Sophia demanded. "Why can't you just let me live my life?" Eleanor's icy composure faltered for a moment before she replied, "Because you're wasting your potential, Sophia. That town will never give you the future you deserve." Sophia stood her ground. "That's not your decision to make. You may control my inheritance, but you don't control me." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Then you leave me no choice." Sophia left the meeting, knowing she had made an enemy of her mother, but she also felt a newfound sense of freedom. For the first time, she was truly fighting for her own life. The atmosphere in the restaurant was quieter than usual, a stark contrast to the energy of the previous night's community dinner. The small victories they had gained felt fragile, like a delicate vase balanced on the edge of a table. Sophia stood at the counter, flipping through pages of financial records, her brows furrowed in concentration. Caleb emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel, his face lined with worry. "We've stopped the bleeding," he said, referring to the restaurant's recent troubles. "But we're still a long way from turning this around." Sophia nodded, her determination unwavering. "Then we dig deeper, work smarter. We're not just fixing a restaurant, Caleb. We're rebuilding its soul." As the evening drew on, Sophia and Caleb began brainstorming ways to restore the restaurant's reputation and attract a steady stream of customers. They decided to combine their strengths, Caleb's culinary expertise and Sophia's business acumen. Sophia outlined her ideas, her pen flying across the notepad. "We need a cohesive brand, a story people can connect with. This restaurant isn't just about food. It's about community, about showcasing Cedarvale's unique charm." Caleb listened intently, his skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. "So, what's the plan?" Sophia smiled, her confidence growing. "First, we revamp the menu to highlight locally sourced ingredients. Then, we'll launch a social media campaign to share the stories behind each dish, from the farmers who grow the produce to the traditions that inspire the recipes. And finally, we host an open house where people can see the kitchen, meet the staff, and experience the restaurant in a new way." The next morning, Sophia and Caleb drove to Cedarvale's farmers market, determined to build relationships with local suppliers. As they wandered among the stalls, Sophia marveled at the abundance of fresh, vibrant produce. She struck up conversations with the vendors, explaining their plans and inviting them to partner with the restaurant. One farmer, an older man named Joe, eyed them warily. "You're the city girl everyone's been talking about," he said. "What makes you think you can save this place?" Sophia met his gaze, her voice steady. "Because I believe in this town, in the people who make it special. If we work together, we can create something extraordinary." Joe considered her words before extending his hand. "All right, let's see what you can do." Back at the restaurant, Caleb and Sophia worked tirelessly to redesign the menu. Caleb experimented with recipes, infusing classic dishes with fresh local flavors. Sophia focused on presentation, ensuring each dish told a story that would resonate with customers. One afternoon, as they tested a new entree, a rosemary-infused lamb dish with roasted vegetables, Sophia couldn't help but laugh at Caleb's intense concentration. "You look like you're trying to solve world hunger," she teased. Caleb smirked, wiping his hands on his apron. "Cooking is serious business, Hart. And for the record, this dish might just do it." Their playful banter was interrupted by Caleb's grandmother, who sampled the dish and nodded approvingly. "This might be the best thing you've ever made, Caleb," she said. But don't let it go to your head. As the revamped menu took shape, Sophia shifted her focus to the restaurant's online presence. She created a new website, complete with professional photos of the dishes and heartfelt stories about the people behind the ingredients. She also launched a social media campaign, sharing behind-the-scenes glimpses of Caleb and the team at work. One post, a video of Caleb explaining the inspiration behind a signature dish, quickly gained traction. Comments poured in, praising his authenticity and dedication. "I never thought I'd say this," Caleb admitted, watching the likes and shares climb. "But you might be onto something with this social media thing." The day of the open house arrived, and the restaurant was abuzz with activity. Sophia and Caleb worked side by side, setting up tasting stations and decorating the space with rustic charm. They had invited everyone in Cedarville, from longtime regulars to skeptics like Joe, hoping to win them over. As guests began to arrive, Sophia greeted them with genuine warmth, guiding them through the restaurant and explaining their vision. Caleb, meanwhile, manned the kitchen, whipping up samples of the new dishes and answering questions with his signature dry humor. One of the highlights of the evening was a cooking demonstration where Caleb showed guests how to prepare one of his signature dishes. As he worked, he shared anecdotes about his family's culinary traditions, drawing laughter and applause. By the end of the night, the restaurant was filled with the hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. Sophia and Caleb stood by the counter, watching as guests lingered, reluctant to leave. "We did it," Sophia said, her voice filled with emotion. "They're starting to believe in us." Caleb nodded, a rare smile gracing his face. "That's because you gave them something to believe in." In the weeks that followed, the restaurant began to thrive. Word of the revamped menu and the open house spread, attracting new customers and rekindling the loyalty of old ones. Sophia and Caleb's partnership deepened as they tackled challenges together, learning to trust and rely on each other. One evening, as they closed up for the night, Caleb turned to Sophia. "You've changed this place, you know. It's not just a restaurant anymore. It's a home." Sophia looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "And you've changed me. I didn't think I could ever feel like I belonged somewhere. But here, I do." Their eyes met, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger. In that moment, Sophia realized that what they were building went beyond the restaurant. It was a foundation for something far more meaningful. The soft glow of the restaurant's evening lights reflected on the polished wooden floors as Sophia stood behind the counter, sorting through receipts and inventory lists. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of this new life, but something about Caleb's demeanor in recent days gnawed at her curiosity. His usual steadfastness seemed clouded by an unspoken worry. And tonight, as the last customers left, she decided to find out why. Sophia caught Caleb in the kitchen, scrubbing down the counters with a furrowed brow. His movements were mechanical, his mind clearly elsewhere. "You've been quiet," she said, leaning against the doorframe. Caleb glanced at her briefly before returning to his task. "Just tired, long day." Sophia crossed her arms, her tone soft but probing. "Caleb, I've been around you long enough to know when something's bothering you. What's going on?" He hesitated, the silence stretching between them like a taut rope. Finally, he set down the sponge and sighed, leaning against the sink. "There's something I haven't told you," he admitted, his voice low. "About the restaurant. And about me." They moved to the dining area, the room quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Caleb sat across from Sophia, his hands clasped tightly together. "When my parents passed, they left me this restaurant, but they also left me their debts. I've been trying to keep it afloat ever since. Sophia's heart sank. Why didn't you tell me? Because it's not your problem, he said firmly. I didn't want you to feel like you had to save me. This was a burden to carry. She shook her head, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. But it is my problem now, Caleb. We're in this together. Caleb hesitated, then continued. Last year, when things got really bad, I took out a loan to keep the place running. A big one. And now, the payments are catching up with me. Sophia's mind raced, her business instincts kicking in. How big are we talking? Enough that if we don't turn things around fast, I could lose everything, he admitted, his gaze dropping to the table. Sophia straightened, her determination sharpening. Then we won't let that happen. We've made progress, Caleb. But now we need to think bigger. I have an idea. He raised an eyebrow, skeptical. What kind of idea? Do you remember the contacts I mentioned from my old life in San Francisco? Some of them are celebrity chefs now, and they owe me favors. What if we organized a charity event? A gala dinner featuring them and showcasing your restaurant? Caleb blinked, taken aback. You think they'd actually come here? Sophia smiled, her confidence unwavering. If I ask, they will. Over the next few days, Sophia threw herself into planning the event. She contacted her former acquaintances, pitching the idea of a charity dinner to support Cedar Vale's local businesses. To her relief, several of them agreed enthusiastically, intrigued by the story of a small-town restaurant fighting against the odds. Caleb watched her work with a mixture of awe and apprehension. You're really pulling this off, he said one evening as they reviewed the guest list. Sophia glanced at him, a playful glint in her eye. Did you doubt me? He chuckled. Not for a second. The night of the gala arrived, transforming the restaurant into a vibrant hub of activity. Strings of fairy lights illuminated the outdoor seating area, and the tantalizing aroma of gourmet dishes filled the air. The town of Cedarvale turned out in full force, joined by food critics, reporters, and a few high-profile guests who had traveled to witness the event. Sophia greeted attendees with poise, her city upbringing shining through in her polished demeanor. Meanwhile, Caleb worked in the kitchen, directing his team with precision as they prepared dish after dish. The highlight of the evening was a live cooking demonstration featuring Caleb and one of the guest chefs. As they worked side by side, Caleb's genuine passion for food and his down-to-earth charm captivated the audience. The event was a resounding success, raising enough money to cover the restaurant's immediate debts, and then some. More importantly, it brought national attention to Caleb's culinary talent and Cedar Vale's unique charm. As the last of the guests departed, Caleb and Sophia sat on the steps outside the restaurant, watching the stars. Caleb turned to her, his expression soft. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to, she replied, her voice warm. This wasn't just about saving the restaurant, Caleb. It was about proving what we can accomplish together. He smiled, the weight of his burdens momentarily lifting. Then, I guess we're a pretty good team. In the days following the event, the restaurant flourished like never before. Customers came from neighboring towns, drawn by the buzz surrounding the gala. Sophia and Caleb's partnership deepened, their once fractious dynamic replaced by a mutual respect and a growing affection they were both hesitant to name. One evening, as they closed up for the night, Caleb caught Sophia's hand as she reached for the light switch. Hey, he said softly, his green eyes meeting hers. Thank you for everything. Sophia's breath hitched, the unspoken emotions between them hanging in the air. You don't have to thank me, she whispered. We're in this together, remember? Caleb's hand lingered on hers for a moment longer before he let go, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Good night, Sophia." "Good night, Caleb," she replied, watching as he disappeared into the kitchen. The town of Cedar Vale buzzed with anticipation in the days leading up to the gala. Flyers decorated every bulletin board. Social media posts shared details of the event, and the promise of celebrity chefs descending on their humble town created a palpable excitement in the air. For Sophia and Caleb, however, the days were a whirlwind of preparation and high stakes. Sophia stood in the restaurant's dining area, reviewing the seating chart for the umpteenth time. Caleb entered, his chef's jacket already on, a clipboard in hand. "How's it looking?" he asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Perfect, as long as nothing catches fire and nobody cancels last minute," she replied, her voice laced with nervous energy. He smirked. "So, only mildly impossible?" She shot him a look, but the corners of her mouth twitched upward. "Don't jinx it." Behind the scenes, the entire community had rallied around the event. Locals volunteered to decorate the space, turning the restaurant and its surrounding area into an elegant venue, adorned with strings of twinkling lights, rustic centerpieces, and tasteful floral arrangements. Caleb's grandmother oversaw the kitchen staff, her years of experience invaluable in organizing the chaos. Even skeptical neighbors, who once doubted Sophia's intentions, pitched in, eager to be part of something bigger than their small town had ever seen. As evening fell, sleek cars began pulling into the makeshift parking area. Sophia greeted the arriving guests with her polished charm, her San Francisco upbringing evident in her ease with high-profile visitors. Among the crowd were food critics, influencers, and a handful of celebrity chefs, including some of Sophia's old acquaintances. One of them, Chef Aria Morales, stepped out of her car in a tailored black dress and hugged Sophia tightly. "You weren't kidding when you said this place was charming," Aria said, taking in the warm glow of the lights and the rustic beauty of the restaurant. Sophia laughed, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "Wait until you try Caleb's food. It's the real star of the show." As the guests settled into their seats, Caleb emerged from the kitchen to a round of applause. Dressed in his chef's whites, he looked composed, but carried the weight of the evening's success on his shoulders. He nodded to Sophia, their shared determination passing between them like an unspoken vow. The main event of the evening was a live cooking demonstration featuring Caleb and Chef Aria. A temporary stage had been set up outside, complete with cameras streaming the event to an online audience. The two chefs worked in tandem, their banter light, but their skills on full display. As Caleb sautéed a pan of locally sourced vegetables, he explained the inspiration behind his dish. "This is a tribute to my parents, who believe that the best meals come from simple, fresh ingredients and a lot of heart." The audience hung on his every word, the authenticity in his voice resonating deeply. Sophia watched from the sidelines, pride swelling in her chest, as she saw Caleb in his element, captivating everyone with his passion and skill. Midway through the evening, a minor crisis threatened to derail the event. A power surge caused the lights to flicker, and for a brief, tense moment, the outdoor setup went dark. Sophia acted quickly, directing volunteers to bring out candles and lanterns, turning the potential disaster into an opportunity for a more intimate atmosphere. The audience applauded her quick thinking, and as the lights returned, the event resumed without a hitch. Caleb glanced at her from the stage, mouthing a silent "thank you." She smiled, the moment a testament to how far they had come as a team. After the demonstration, the gala transitioned to a charity auction, where items ranging from gourmet cooking lessons to handcrafted Cedar Vale goods were up for bid. Sophia took the stage, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "This town has given me more than I ever expected," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. "And tonight is about more than just saving a restaurant. It's about investing in a community that embodies resilience and heart. Every dollar raised tonight will go towards supporting local businesses and ensuring Cedarvale thrives." The auction was a roaring success, with bids exceeding their initial goals. By the end of the night, the restaurant's debts were not only covered, but a surplus was raised to fund new projects. As the last guests departed and the volunteers began tidying up, Sophia and Caleb found a quiet moment alone. They stood outside the restaurant, the cool night air filled with the faint hum of crickets and the distant chatter of a few lingering guests. "You pulled it off," Caleb said, his voice filled with awe. "I don't even know how to thank you." Sophia turned to him, her expression soft. "You don't have to. This wasn't just for you. It was for all of us." They fell into a comfortable silence, the weight of the night's success settling in. Caleb hesitated before speaking again, his voice quieter. "I think I underestimated you when we first met." Sophia smiled, a mixture of playfulness and sincerity. "You wouldn't be the first." The following morning, as Sophia reviewed the event's results in the restaurant office, an email notification caught her eye. It was from a prominent food critic who had attended the gala. "Caleb Walker's cuisine is a revelation," the email read. "His approach to comfort food with a contemporary twist is exactly what the culinary world needs. Expect Cedarvale to become a must-visit destination." Sophia's breath caught. She rushed to find Caleb, who was repairing a broken kitchen shelf. "You need to see this," she said, handing him her phone. As Caleb read the email, a rare smile spread across his face. "Does this mean we've made it?" Sophia grinned. "I think it means we're just getting started." The success of the gala marked a turning point, not just for the restaurant, but for Sophia and Caleb's relationship. They found themselves working more closely than ever, their mutual respect deepening with each passing day. The tension that once defined their dynamic had softened, replaced by a quiet understanding that neither dared to name. One evening, as they closed up the restaurant, Caleb turned to Sophia. "I don't think I've ever believed in something as much as I believe in what we're building here." Sophia looked at him, her heart swelling. "Neither have I." Their gazes held for a moment longer than usual, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger. Though neither said it aloud, they both knew that what had started as an arrangement was becoming something much more profound. The victory of the gala and the subsequent positive press for Caleb's restaurant felt like a triumph against all odds. However, peace in Cedarvale was fleeting. For Sophia, the past was never far behind, and Eleanor Hart had no intention of allowing her daughter's rebellion to go unchecked. The day started like any other. Sophia was sitting in the restaurant's small office, poring over the growing list of reservations spurred by the gala's success. She was halfway through her coffee when a knock echoed from the front door. It was unusual for anyone to arrive during off hours. Caleb wiped his hands on a kitchen towel and moved toward the door. "I'll get it," he said, casting a glance at Sophia. But when Caleb opened the door, he froze. Standing on the other side, clad in an impeccably tailored suit, was Eleanor Hart. Her sharp gaze scanned the rustic interior with barely concealed disdain before landing on Sophia. "Mother?" Sophia's voice was filled with disbelief and apprehension. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor stepped inside, as though she owned the place, her stiletto heels clicking against the tiled floor. "We need to talk," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. The tension in the room was palpable as Eleanor and Sophia faced each other. Caleb stood to the side, his jaw tightening, as he observed the woman who had caused Sophia so much grief. "Mother, if you've come to criticize my choices, save your breath," Sophia said, crossing her arms. "I'm not leaving Cedar Vale." Eleanor raised an eyebrow, her cool demeanor unshaken. "You misunderstand me, darling. I didn't come here to persuade you. I came to issue an ultimatum." Sophia's stomach dropped, but she refused to show weakness. "Go on, then." Eleanor pulled a document from her designer bag and placed it on the counter. "This is a formal agreement. If you return to San Francisco and cut ties with this arrangement," she said, glancing at Caleb with thinly veiled contempt, "I will reinstate your inheritance in full. No strings attached." Caleb stiffened, but said nothing, letting Sophia take the lead. She glanced at the document, then back at Eleanor. "And if I refuse?" Eleanor's lips curved into a cold smile. "Then you'll be disowned. No money, no access to your trust fund, nothing." The ultimatum hung heavy in the air. Sophia clenched her fists, anger bubbling beneath her composed exterior. "Do you really think money is all that matters to me?" she asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "I'm not the same person who left San Francisco." Eleanor tilted her head, her expression almost pitying. "Oh, darling, I know exactly who you are. You're a heart, and hearts don't squander their lives in places like this." Sophia stepped forward, her green eyes blazing. "Places like this?" she repeated. "You mean places where people work hard, care about each other, and build something real? That's more than you've ever done." Eleanor's composure cracked for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered. "Think carefully, Sophia. Without me, you'll have nothing. And I assure you, Caleb Walker won't be able to offer you the life you're accustomed to." Caleb finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You're underestimating Sophia. She's stronger than you think." Eleanor's gaze shifted to Caleb, her expression icy. "Stay out of this. You have no idea what's at stake." Sophia moved between them. "That's enough. You've said your piece, and I've made my decision." Taking a deep breath, Sophia turned to face her mother. "I'm staying," she said firmly. "I'm staying here, with Caleb, with this town, and with the life I've built for myself." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this." "No," Sophia said, her voice unwavering. "The only thing I'd regret is going back to a life where I had no control over my own choices." For a moment, Eleanor seemed stunned. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The door closed behind her, leaving a deafening silence in her wake. Caleb reached out, placing a reassuring hand on Sophia's shoulder. "You okay?" Sophia nodded, though her heart felt heavy. "I'm fine. It's just hard to cut ties, even when you know it's the right thing to do." Eleanor's departure marked a turning point, but it wasn't without consequences. Within days, rumors began to circulate in San Francisco's elite circles, tarnishing Sophia's name and questioning her character. Eleanor had used her influence to paint Sophia as reckless and ungrateful, further isolating her from her old life. Despite the challenges, Sophia found solace in Cedar Vale. The townspeople, who had once been wary of her, rallied around her. Caleb's grandmother became a constant source of wisdom, while Caleb himself was an unwavering pillar of support. "You've done the hard part," Caleb said one evening as they walked through the fields. "Now, it's about proving her wrong, not for her, but for yourself." Sophia smiled, the weight of his words sinking in. "You're right. This isn't about her anymore. It's about building something I can be proud of." In the weeks that followed, Sophia and Caleb worked tirelessly to solidify the restaurant's success. They expanded the menu, introduced cooking classes for the community, and even started hosting small events. Each step was a testament to their shared vision and resilience. One afternoon, as they prepared for a busy evening service, Caleb paused and looked at Sophia. "You know, when this all started, I thought you'd last maybe a week." Sophia laughed, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "And now?" "Now," he said, his tone softening, "I can't imagine doing this without you." Their eyes met, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger with each passing day. Eleanor's influence loomed like a shadow, but Sophia refused to let it dictate her future. When another letter arrived, a thinly veiled threat about the consequences of her defiance, Sophia tore it up without a second thought. "She'll come back," Caleb warned, watching her from across the room. "I know," Sophia replied, her voice steady, "but I'll be ready." As the sun set over Cedar Vale, casting the town in hues of gold and orange, Sophia and Caleb stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they were stronger than Eleanor's threats, and they were determined to protect the life they had built. The aftermath of Eleanor's ultimatum left ripples not only in Sophia's life, but also in the tight-knit community of Cedar Vale. Her choice to stand by Caleb and the life they were building had not only strengthened their bond, but also solidified her resolve to face whatever came next. Word of Sophia's defiance against her mother spread quickly throughout Cedar Vale. The locals, many of whom had initially viewed her as an outsider, now saw her as one of their own. At the diner, at the market, and even at the festival grounds, people stopped to offer words of encouragement. "Don't let anyone tell you how to live your life," said Martha, one of the oldest residents in town, as she handed Sophia a freshly baked pie. "You're doing just fine." The community's support was more than just comforting, it was empowering. Caleb noticed the shift in Sophia's demeanor as she embraced her new role in Cedar Vale. She became more involved in town events, suggesting ideas to improve local businesses and connecting with residents on a personal level. One afternoon, Caleb watched as Sophia led a group of children in planting herbs outside the restaurant. The sight of her, laughing and covered in dirt, filled him with a sense of pride. "You're really making this place your home," he said, later that evening. Sophia smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's not just home. It's where I finally feel like I belong." Back in San Francisco, Eleanor was far from conceding defeat. She sat in her grand office, surrounded by her legal team, plotting her next move. "We need to remind Sophia of what she's walked away from," she said coldly, her sharp eyes fixed on her advisors. Her plan was insidious. She hired a private investigator to dig into Caleb's past, hoping to uncover something that could tarnish his reputation. At the same time, she used her connections in the media to spread rumors about Sophia's reckless behavior and poor decisions. The first wave of Eleanor's plan hit Cedar Vale when a reporter from a major newspaper arrived unannounced at the restaurant. Sophia was caught off guard, but remained composed. "I'm happy to answer any questions," she said, her voice calm but firm. The article that followed painted a distorted picture, suggesting that Caleb's restaurant was failing and that Sophia was clinging to a futile dream. The townspeople, however, saw through the manipulation and rallied around the couple. "We know the truth," said Mr. Jenkins, a farmer who supplied produce to the restaurant. "And that's all that matters." Despite the support, the article left Sophia shaken. She and Caleb sat on the porch, late one evening, the silence between them heavy with unspoken worries. "She won't stop," Sophia finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not until she's destroyed everything we've built. Caleb reached for her hand, his grip steady and reassuring. Then we won't stop either, he said. We'll fight her together. Their determination only grew stronger as they began to strategize ways to counter Eleanor's influence. Sophia proposed hosting a community event to showcase the restaurant's success and Cedar Vale's resilience. It's not just about us, she explained to Caleb. It's about showing everyone that this town is thriving, despite what people like Eleanor want them to believe. The event, dubbed the Cedar Vale Showcase, brought together local businesses, artists, and farmers. The restaurant was the centerpiece, with Caleb preparing a special menu featuring locally sourced ingredients. Sophia took charge of the event's organization, working tirelessly to ensure its success. She enlisted the help of the entire town, from setting up booths to promoting the event on social media. On the day of the showcase, Cedar Vale's main street was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Booths lined the sidewalks, offering everything from handmade crafts to fresh produce. Children ran through the crowd, laughing as they played games, while live music filled the air. Sophia stood at the restaurant's entrance, greeting guests and directing them to the various attractions. Her energy was contagious, and Caleb couldn't help but admire how seamlessly she had integrated herself into the community. As the event reached its peak, Sophia took the stage to address the crowd. She spoke about the journey that had brought her to Cedar Vale, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. This town has shown me what it means to work together, to support one another, and to fight for what matters, she said, her voice steady and filled with emotion. And for that, I will always be grateful. Her speech was met with thunderous applause, and Caleb joined her on stage, taking her hand. Together, they represented not just their restaurant, but the strength and unity of Cedar Vale. The showcase's success was a blow to Eleanor's efforts. Her private investigator had come up empty-handed, and the media's interest in tarnishing Sophia's reputation waned in the face of overwhelming community support. In a final attempt to regain control, Eleanor arrived in Cedar Vale unannounced, her presence causing a stir. She confronted Sophia and Caleb in the restaurant, her frustration evident. "You're throwing your life away," she said, her voice sharp. "For what? A small-town fantasy?" Sophia met her mother's gaze without flinching. "I'm building a life that matters to me. That's more than you've ever understood." Eleanor's composure cracked, but before she could respond, Caleb stepped forward. "You can't control her anymore," he said firmly. "Sophia's stronger than you think." Realizing she had lost, Eleanor left Cedar Vale, her defeat clear. For Sophia, it was a moment of liberation, a chance to fully embrace the life she had chosen. In the days that followed, Sophia and Caleb continued to thrive. The restaurant's reputation grew, and their bond with the community deepened. They worked tirelessly to ensure that Cedar Vale remained a place of hope and opportunity for everyone who called it home. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sophia turned to Caleb. "Do you think we finally won?" Caleb smiled, his hand finding hers. "We've won something better than a fight. We've built a future." The Cedar Vale morning was crisp and serene, with the golden rays of the sun kissing the dewy grass. Sophia stood in front of the restaurant, the comforting aroma of fresh bread wafting from the kitchen. Today wasn't just another day. It was a milestone. The journey she and Caleb had embarked on had finally reached a place of calm and hope, a testament to their resilience and unwavering determination. Preparations for Sophia and Caleb's wedding were in full swing. The entire town had rallied behind them, treating the event as a community celebration rather than just a personal affair. From the florist on Main Street to the local seamstress, everyone pitched in to ensure the day would be unforgettable. "Have you decided on the flowers yet?" asked Martha Jenkins, her hands full of wildflowers from her garden. Sophia smiled, touched by the older woman's thoughtfulness. "I was thinking of something simple. Lavender and daisies." "Perfect choice," Martha said with a nod. "It'll match the spirit of this place." Caleb walked in at that moment, holding a tray of freshly baked pastries. "And these will match the spirit of the reception," he quipped, setting the tray down. His easy smile made Sophia's heart flutter. The wedding venue was set to be the town square, a place steeped in Cedar Vale's history and charm. Bunting and fairy lights were strung across the streets, and long tables were arranged for a communal feast. Caleb's team at the restaurant prepared a menu featuring locally sourced ingredients, blending his culinary expertise with the flavors of the community. Sophia spent her days balancing the wedding plans and her ongoing work with local businesses. Her efforts with Caleb to promote sustainable practices had inspired others to adopt similar approaches, turning Cedar Vale into a model of resilience and innovation. "You've really changed things around here," said Ethan, a young farmer who had benefited from Sophia's marketing advice. "We're all grateful for what you and Caleb have done." Sophia felt a swell of pride. "We couldn't have done it without everyone's support." The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear. The town square was transformed into a magical setting, with wildflowers adorning the archway, where Sophia and Caleb would exchange their vows. The townsfolk gathered, dressed in their finest, ready to celebrate the union of two people who had become the heart and soul of Cedar Vale. As the music began to play, Sophia stepped into the square on her father's arm, her simple yet elegant gown flowing in the gentle breeze. She looked radiant, her joy evident in every step. Caleb stood at the altar, his eyes locked on her, his expression a mixture of love and admiration. The ceremony was simple, but deeply emotional. Caleb spoke first, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Sophia, you've shown me a world beyond what I ever imagined. You've brought light, strength, and love into my life, and I promise to stand by you, no matter what comes our way." Sophia's voice trembled slightly as she responded, "Caleb, you've taught me the value of hard work, community, and love. With you, I've found a purpose and a home. I vow to support you, to dream with you, and to face every challenge together." The crowd erupted into cheers as the couple sealed their vows with a kiss, their love shining brighter than the fairy lights strung above. With the wedding behind them, Sophia and Caleb turned their attention to the next chapter of their journey. The restaurant, now a thriving hub, had become a centerpiece of Cedar Vale's growth. Sophia's initiative to create a cooperative for local farmers was gaining traction, ensuring that the community's prosperity was shared by all. One evening, as Sophia reviewed the plans for the cooperative, Caleb joined her on the porch, a cup of tea in hand. "You've turned this town into something incredible," he said, his voice filled with pride. Sophia shook her head. "We did it together, Caleb. None of this would have happened without you." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Michael, one of Caleb's childhood friends and a talented artist. He carried a large canvas, revealing a painting of the town square during their wedding. "I thought this might remind you of everything you've built," Michael said. Sophia was moved to tears. "It's beautiful." "Thank you." Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Eleanor sat in her office, her empire intact, but her influence over Sophia diminished. A letter lay on her desk, one she had read and reread countless times. It was from Sophia, thanking her for teaching her resilience, even if the lessons had been hard-earned. Eleanor sighed, a mixture of pride and regret swirling within her. She knew she had lost the battle for control, but in doing so, she had gained something unexpected: respect for her daughter's strength. Back in Cedar Vale, Sophia and Caleb hosted a community dinner to celebrate the restaurant's one-year anniversary under their joint leadership. The event was a testament to their journey, filled with laughter, shared stories, and delicious food. As the night drew to a close, Sophia stood before the gathered crowd. "This town has given me more than I could ever repay," she said. "You've taught me the value of community, hard work, and love. Thank you for making this our home." The applause was thunderous, and Caleb wrapped an arm around her, whispering, "You've done it, Sophia. You've built something truly special." Later that evening, as they stood on the restaurant's balcony overlooking the quiet town, Sophia rested her head on Caleb's shoulder. The stars above twinkled, and the distant sound of laughter from the town square reached their ears. "Do you ever think about what might have been?" Caleb asked softly. Sophia smiled. "Sometimes. But then I look at what we have, and I know there's nowhere else I'd rather be." As they stood there, the future stretched out before them, filled with promise and possibility. Together, they had turned a forced arrangement into a love story that redefined everything they thought they knew about themselves and the world. As Sophia and Caleb's incredible journey comes to a close, we're left with one undeniable truth: love, perseverance, and community can transform even the most impossible situations into something extraordinary. Their story reminds us that sometimes life's most unexpected detours lead us exactly where we're meant to be. But what would you do if you were in Sophia's shoes? Could you trade a life of luxury for a chance at something real? Tell us in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget, this is just the beginning. There are countless stories of love, redemption, and resilience waiting to unfold. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. And until next time, keep believing in the power of change and the beauty of new beginnings. See you in the next story. Love sparkles,